Welcome to the Pencil Bob channel. I hope you enjoy my stories.
The day we got that lawsuit, I sat at the kitchen table staring at the papers, feeling a mixture of disbelief and rage bubbling up. This had to be some kind of bad joke, right? But there it was, spelled out in cold, black ink. Our HOA, the same group that had happily inspected our patio mid-construction and nodded along when we invited them over for the final walkthrough, was now demanding $30,000. Not for damages, not for repairs, just for their legal fees to sue us over a technicality. I read the letter aloud to my partner, my voice shaking with anger, each word feeling heavier than the last. They're saying we didn't get initial permission. What about the 5 of them standing here, tape measures in hand, walking all over the yard like they were surveying a construction site they owned? They practically gave us a thumbs up on the spot. And the whole time, they were smiling, nodding, and chatting about how nice it was going to look when it was finished. What about the damn pleasantries we exchanged? The coffee I offered? The compliments they made about the materials we picked out? Were they just lying through their teeth the entire time? My partner leaned forward, her brow furrowed, staring at the letter like it might spontaneously combust. They're just looking for money, my partner said, her voice dripping with frustration as she leaned against the counter, arms crossed tightly. But $30,000? Seriously, who even has that kind of cash just lying around? Do they think we're sitting on a pile of gold? What kind of middle-class family can cough up that much money? Especially over something as ridiculous as a patio. It's not like we built a mansion back there. We're talking about bricks and a gazebo, not some luxury resort. She shook her head, her expression a mix of disbelief and anger. This isn't even about the patio anymore. It's just about squeezing us dry. The whole thing started months earlier, and now every detail of it replayed in my mind. We had saved for years to replace that rickety old deck with something more practical and beautiful, a brick paver patio with a Costco gazebo. We had crossed every T and dotted every I with the township, making sure everything was up to code. The project went off without a hitch until the day the HOA board waltzed into our backyard, acting like they'd stumbled upon a crime scene. Someone complained your contractor was stepping on the grass, one of them said, his tone too casual for the nonsense he was spouting. I remember blinking at him, almost in disbelief, wondering if this was some kind of prank. Stepping on the grass? Really? Was this what they were wasting their time on? Whose grass? I asked, my voice rising before I could stop it. There's a whole neighborhood full of grass. Are we supposed to stop every time someone's toe grazes a blade? Are we supposed to get permission for every square inch of lawn now? Because if that's the case, I'm pretty sure we're going to need a map just to navigate the yard. I couldn't tell if I was angry or just baffled by how absurd this had gotten. That's when we learned about our rear neighbor, the Karen to end all Karens. I'd never met her face to face, but her reputation preceded her like a dark cloud. People in the neighborhood had whispered about her for months, how she would call animal control if your dog barked for more than 30 seconds. Or how she'd glare at kids playing basketball in their own driveway as if they were committing some sort of high crime. The more I heard about her, the more I started to picture her as some kind of self-appointed neighborhood sheriff, armed with a phone and way too much free time. Apparently, she had nothing better to do than watch our construction crew from her window, waiting for a chance to nitpick. She must have had a front row seat because it didn't take long before she called the HOA with her complaint about our workers stepping on her grass. No one even knew where her property ended, but to her, every inch of the world around her was part of her domain. I could just picture her, peering through the blinds, counting every step our contractor took on the lawn, just waiting for an excuse to make our lives miserable. She didn't care about the work getting done, the hours spent, or the money that went into it. She just cared about making sure she could control everything around her. I imagined her sitting there, probably sipping her morning coffee, gleefully dialing the HOA's number with a self-righteous grin. What kind of person does that? I mean, was this really the hill she was willing to die on? Some contractor stepping on the grass for a few seconds? It was clear she had nothing better to do than create drama. It wasn't about the patio, or the grass, or any of the other ridiculous complaints. It was about her need to have control, to assert her presence in a world that didn't revolve around her. And somehow, her petty complaints had managed to get the HOA involved. It was infuriating. How had it come to this? All because of one person who couldn't let go of their obsession with being the neighborhood watchdog. We went through the motions with the board. They inspected the grass, which, by the way, wasn't even damaged. They looked over the project and reminded us to check in with them before making the final payment. We did exactly that, and they gave us the green light. I even offered them coffee, trying to keep things friendly. They smiled, nodded, and walked off as if everything was fine. And it was fine, until it wasn't. About a month later, we got a letter claiming we had violated the bylaws by not obtaining prior approval for the patio. I was dumbfounded. I read the letter over and over again, trying to make sense of it. It didn't add up. We had done everything by the book. Township permission, board inspection, even a casual chat with a couple of board members about the project while it was being built. The idea that now, suddenly, it was a problem felt like a slap in the face. I called the board president immediately, hoping to clear up what had to be a misunderstanding. Maybe I missed something. Maybe there was a detail I hadn't seen. But as I dialed the number, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was no mistake. Look, we submitted the plans to the township, and you all came to inspect during construction, I said, my voice tight with frustration. How could you say we didn't get approval when you literally stood here and told us it was fine? It's not about the construction, he replied smoothly, his voice calm, almost rehearsed. It's about the process. You didn't follow the proper procedure outlined in the CC&Rs. I stared at the phone, unable to believe what I was hearing. The process? Really? We followed every step that made sense. The township gave us the okay, the board members saw it, and we even had a chat with them during the project. So why now? What is this about? He sighed, a sound that made it clear he wasn't bothered by my confusion. We have bylaws for a reason, he said, as if that was some sort of explanation that should satisfy me. You didn't get prior approval, and that's the problem. The procedure clearly states that all structural changes need to be approved before anything is done. I gritted my teeth. So, what's the issue with the patio? Is it the materials? The location? Tell me what needs to change, and we'll fix it. I'm ready to make this right, but I need to know what's wrong. He hesitated for a moment, then finally admitted, there's no issue with the patio itself. The materials are fine, the location is fine. There's no structural concern at all. But you didn't ask for permission beforehand. That's the problem. I was silent for a beat, trying to process the sheer ridiculousness of it all. The patio was already there, done, and no one had raised an issue until now. So, you're telling me the patio itself isn't the issue, I said, the sarcasm creeping in. But because we didn't ask you for permission to build it before we even started, you want to drag us through this mess? That's right, he said matter-of-factly, as if this was some clear-cut case, as if I should have known better. The whole thing felt like a joke, a terrible, frustrating joke that I was stuck in. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My mind raced, trying to wrap itself around what he was saying. So, you're saying this is about paperwork, not the actual patio? I repeated, making sure I heard him right, but it felt like I was talking to a wall. He didn't hesitate. That's correct, he said, as if it was the most logical thing in the world. No hesitation, no remorse. Just cold, flat bureaucracy. I could feel my pulse picking up. Are you serious? I half laughed, trying to keep myself composed, but my frustration was bubbling over. The patio's been up for months. It's been inspected. We followed all the rules that were supposed to matter. And now you're telling me this is about some paperwork issue? He didn't flinch. It's not about what you did, it's about how you did it. The process wasn't followed, and that's the problem. I clenched my fists, the anger rising in my chest. So the fact that we didn't hand you a piece of paper before we even started is more important than the actual structure that's sitting there now? That's what this is about? A form we didn't fill out? Exactly, he said, as if he were stating the obvious. I was speechless for a moment. The entire conversation felt like a nightmare, and I couldn't wake up from it. I hung up the phone, seething. How could they take something as trivial as paperwork and turn it into this massive ordeal? Over the next few weeks, we complied with their requests, submitting every document they asked for, even inviting them back to inspect the patio again. They showed up like some kind of tactical unit, 5 of them with tape measures, clipboards, and a smug air of authority. There's no issue with the dimensions or placement, one of them admitted as they packed up to leave. So what's the problem, then? I asked, throwing my hands in the air. What do you want us to do? The president gave me a tight smile. It's not approved. That's when the letters started coming, one after another, each more aggressive than the last, all boiling down to the same thing. We hadn't followed the process, and the patio wasn't approved. They never suggested a solution or a compromise, just a constant barrage of demands and threats. Then came the lawsuit. By the time we reached mediation, I was exhausted but ready to fight. Our attorney laid out the facts. The board had no grounds for the lawsuit, especially since they hadn't followed their own rules about seeking member approval for expenses over $750. The HOA's lawyer argued that we had violated but the mediators weren't buying it. It seems to me, one of them said, looking directly at the board president, that this lawsuit is less about the patio and more about setting an example. Would you agree? The president shifted uncomfortably in his seat but said nothing. When the panel ruled against them, I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe this nightmare was finally coming to an end. But no, they were doubling down, refusing to back off, and pushing the case to court. At the next HOA meeting, the room was packed with neighbors, most of them furious about the board's actions. People were shouting over each other, demanding answers about how their dues were being spent. "This is ridiculous," one man yelled. "You're using our money to bully a young family over a patio that everyone agrees looks great." The president tried to maintain control, but the crowd wasn't having it. Karen, of course, was there, sitting in the front row with a smug look on her face, as if this circus was all for her benefit. At one point, she even stood up and started ranting about how rules are rules, and how we were setting a bad example for the neighborhood. "Oh, give me a break," I snapped, unable to hold my tongue any longer. "You called them because someone stepped on the grass. That's what started this whole mess." She turned to glare at me, her lips curling into a sneer. "If you had just followed the rules, we wouldn't be here. And if you had minded your own business, we wouldn't be here either," I shot back. The room erupted into chaos, and the meeting ended without any resolution. The board refused to back down, and we refused to cave. Every day felt like a battle, with legal fees piling up and the constant stress of wondering what they'd try next. We're still in the thick of it, and there's no end in sight. But one thing's for sure, they picked the wrong family to mess with.
Not sure about your state, but mine, HOA, or any entity that is asking for legal fee reimbursement A, need to show that legal fees were paid out, or to be paid out B, the judge needs to agree that fees are reasonable and fair, meaning that if HOA spent $30K in legal fees, they might get anywhere from $0 to $30K. But in your case, seems like they skipped a lot of steps for a cheaper resolution. So I'll be surprised if the judge grants them $30K if anything at all. Good luck, this is some bullshit. Tacit acceptance. When someone agrees to something without saying it out loud, it can also mean that someone approves of something without explicitly saying so. The board inspected the project while it was in progress, and as requested were informed when it was completed before final payment was made, and at no time did they object. Therefore they tacitly approved of the project. If they had had issues with it, they should have insisted that the project was halted until their issues were resolved. They didn't make any attempt to halt the project, so gave approval without explicitly saying so. I studied law but IANAL, and I'm not from the USA, so things might be different over there. I hate HOAs with a fierce passion that knows no bounds. I wish you all the best and truly hope you get to tell that nonsensical HOA you live in to shove it. I've been a lurker here for a bit, and have never been so angry after reading a story as I have been with what you shared. I'm sending you all the good vibes and thoughts, and once your family has prevailed against this nonsense, please update us. I love a good HOA getting told to suck it story, and would love to hear about it when you get to tell your HOA to pound sand.
I would like to thank you for watching the video to the end. To encourage us to make more videos, please like, subscribe, comment, as well as share. Check out this other video if you haven't already.